Heide's tower of flame lies beyond the far gate, but the road leading there is perilous.
Hello there, Seraphim17 once again. This is my Dark Souls 2 walkthrough. This is Heide's Tower of Flame, and these are the... is it the Old Knights? Essentially, they're one of the most enjoyable enemies on the game because they're big, they're intimidating, but they're fair. And I like them for that. And there's an enemy later on in the game which is essentially a model swap with the same moveset, but the moveset is twice as fast and twice as damaging. And they're called Drake Keepers. And those are an enemy that I would have happily in my list of things that I think are completely unfair in this game. Because watch how fast this guy swings. He swings pretty fast. But he doesn't swing fast enough for it to be bullshit. You know, there's time to dodge, there's time to, to recover, and he's okay, and I agree with that. The Drake Keepers swing multiple times, insanely fast. Like, it's so strange that they've done what they've done in that particular area. And it makes me really appreciate this enemy here even more, just because of how well they're designed compared to the travesty that is those Drake Keepers, who, for whatever reason, are just insane, absolutely insane. And a lot of people will just say they're not cheap, they're just hard, and they're really not hard. They're the exact same enemy as this. They just swing a million times faster and poise crush like bastards. It's brutal. It's completely brutal. So much so that a lot of people will just run past them because they're assholes. They're absolutely assholes. But once we've lured this guy out, you'll notice I put the bow on to pull him. The reason I do that is not only because having a bow is super useful on this game, but you don't have to be able to use the bows to use the bow, which is something you couldn't do in Dark Souls. It just didn't work right. On this game, much more effective with things like that. Same with the weapons. In Dark Souls 1, you literally couldn't do anything with them a lot of the times. But on this game, you still kind of can. And I like that. I think that's definitely a step to being more interesting. It's much closer to Demon Souls in that respect, where some of the weapons were more useful when you couldn't use them than they were when you could. And I like that depth, that interesting, facet to the inventories. But once you kill the big dude with the sword, two little guys are going to turn up. And the two little guys are assholes, because they come together. But the cool thing here is the AI on them is shitty. So you'll generally have one of them who just turns around and runs away. And that's going to enable you to single out his friend and kill him. If you get really lucky, one of these guys will fall off because the pathing is having trouble, and you'll get a free kill. But once you've killed that one, the next one's going to be on his own in this massive area, so you can fight him and kill him comfortably. Heide's Tower is pretty unique in as much that it has two, I would say, main bosses, which could be called two sub-bosses, because both of them are pretty simple and, not that important in the grand scheme of things. The first one is the Dragon Slayer, who is completely optional. You do not have to do him at all. I am going to do him to get more souls to build this character towards where we need him to be earlier on. And then the other one is the Dragon Rider, as I flick my headset like an idiot. Dragon Rider is pretty much mandatory, because you will never be able to get to the Huntsman Copse without it, which is an interesting choice when you consider that the developers said you would be able to go anywhere in the game at the very beginning if you were good enough, and unfortunately that just is not true. And I was so excited for that being a thing that it's really disappointing that it wasn't. But once you've killed that dude who I just pulled with the bow, this guy aggroes and comes for you. You'll notice the L2 on these maces, because the maces do strike damage, they're incredibly effective against armor, and these big guys just cannot stand it. So the maces are one of the best weapons to have in this particular area of the game. In fact, I would go as far as to say the mace is one of the strongest weapons in the game. You can use it at soul level 1. There's a class that starts with it. It's so good in so many ways. The only problem with it is it's kind of slow, and it's got a difficult moveset to get used to with the way it swings, because it's very limited and it doesn't have a lot of range. But those aside, super good weapon. There's been a couple of close-ups of my character as well, and I've named him after an anime character, and I'm curious if anybody's been able to spot who it is. And there's one facial feature that should essentially tell you who I am, because I don't generally make myself look like this on purpose, but this was the closest I could get to the particular character that he's themed off. And that right there is a very important ring, guys. The Ring of Binding is the single most important ring for somebody who's running out of effigies and who's dying a lot, because it allows your life to be larger in spite of the curse, so bear that in mind. But this is the old Dragon Slayer. He looks very reminiscent of an old friend. And the weakness to this guy is not only his poise, as I just displayed then, but it is strafing to his right. If you strafe to his right, he will miss you with almost everything he does, because he has a lot of trouble. Watch out for that, that's the ground slam. But you'll notice that there's a soul in the room. Ornstein did kill me. He comboed me in a move that I couldn't get out of. It was the thrusting move where he hits you a couple times. For some reason I was stun locked and I couldn't roll. And that's really the only threat he poses if he does catch you in those multi-hit combos, because as you just saw, he's a very simple boss. And the funny part is, out of all the bosses that kill me in this recorded walkthrough, there weren't that many. Like, Ornstein was literally one of the only bosses that killed me. And right now I'm in a spot of bother, as you might notice, because I ran past all these geezers to get back in after I died, which is something I edited out which you didn't see. They're all waiting for me, and normally the easiest thing to do here would be probably to Homeward Bone and then, you know, just carry on towards the Dragon Rider, but I decided to kill them and to continue so that this was all one cut as opposed to, you know, trimming the video. And it's awkward, I'm not going to lie. These are some big enemies, they have big damage potential and they have big range, especially him. He's the one you want to watch. The sword guys, they have some wicked range. Luckily enough though, they have a lot less defense than the shield blokes for some reason. And I think it's just to balance them. It's an intelligent design. It's the same with the mace. Mace guy has less life because mace guy is very dangerous. And if you want to see how dangerous that guy can be, watch my blind playthrough. He wrecked me when I first bumped into him. He really did. He just completely conquered my ass. But now that we're back to this middle tower, we can then push forward over here. This is one of the areas where on New Game Plus you get a nice phantom surprise. But down here there's just some green moss, or some green blossom, sorry, in the chest. And there's one enemy before the boss. So just be careful of this guy, because this is a 3-hit combo, and I rolled way too early for it just then. But considering that was counter damage, he didn't do a lot of damage to me, which was kind of lucky. Another thing to bear in mind on this walkthrough, guys, I will be wearing this piece of armor for the full game. I don't think I upgrade it. That's just for the purpose of, never do I show you a strategy where I survive because I have either more life than you or better armor. And it gives you a lot of flexibility where if you're struggling, you can just upgrade your armor and get a better result. But this is Mr. Dragon Rider. He does not like people who hug his back. One would say he's quite the homophobe. And we're going to beat him up from behind. And as you can see, his poise just cannot cut the maces. The maces are too strong for him. And because we went to the Bastille, we now have the More Souls ring, the Covetous Silver Serpent ring, and it's going to enable us to capitalise on these boss fights, and we're going to be able to get a nice stock of souls, which is going to help in levelling our character appropriately and upgrading our equipment. So there's me hitting the bonfire. Then I talked to Lycia. I'm going to trim out the conversation with Lycia. It looks like I didn't talk to her, but I did, guys. I've just edited it. The reason I say do that is if you speak to her and exhaust her dialogue until she gets to the point where she's telling you that she perhaps isn't as nice and as faithful or as, you know, a good servant of faith as she tries to think she is, or tries to portray that she is, she'll move to Majula. And when she moves to Majula, you can then use her to swap the mechanism that led us to Heide's Tower of Flame. It'll then traverse us into a place called Huntsman Copse, and that is the place from the beta. And I'm not going there because I particularly like the area, or because I'm experienced in the area. I'm going there because it's the quickest and only path to Earthen Peak, and from Earthen Peak we can get to a lady who's going to sell us more upgrade equipment, and then from there we're going to be able to get an Ember, which is going to solidify our weapons to like +7 at least, and sometimes plus higher depending on how many chunks we've got. For some reason, they've made it really difficult to get strong weapons early in this game. So as a counter, instead they've made it so that there are 2 elemental weapons you can get really early. But as far as, you know, twinking your gear in a single player perspective, you have to go through 2 areas before you can even consider it, which is kind of bullshitty in my opinion. Like, the thing I loved the most about Dark Souls was how knowledge and experience paid off. And there's a YouTuber called Master Kiz who said something on his Dark Souls 2 playthrough that really resonated with me as a really true philosophy for Dark Souls, which is the reward for your first playthrough in Dark Souls is your second playthrough. Because you're so much better at the game, you're so much more knowledgeable, and you're able then to truly start enjoying the aspects that previously beat you down and got the better of you. And it's a very liberating and empowering feeling. And one of those aspects is the ability to level up and get weapons. And on Dark Souls 1, you could, from the Berg, go down into the depths. You could get the first Ember, and you could upgrade weapons, you know, to +10. And then from there you could use New Londo to get the next Ember and upgrade them to +15. There were a lot of ways you could really power yourself up really quickly. Like, there's countless videos on YouTube of people going directly down into the catacombs at the very beginning, killing Pinwheel, getting the souls from Pinwheel, going to is it Vamos, the blacksmith, and then getting a chaos or a fire weapon super early on. Like, a lot of people use the Great Scythe, a lot of people use whatever they were using, and immediately off the bat they've got an elemental weapon, which are pretty easy to upgrade when you know what you're doing. But it's same with the chunks, man. As soon as you drain New Londo, farming Dark Wraiths is kind of easy, even on a level 1 character, because all you need to do is know how they fight. Circle them, backstab them, circle them, backstab them. If you've got a shield, boom, you're halfway there. Like, it might take a while, but you would be able to get a max weapon before you've even really rung a bell. And on Dark Souls 2, doesn't really seem to be the case. You have to do quite a lot of work to get to the point to even get your weapons where you can access those higher tiers of strength. And when you bear in mind that the scaling is so diminished, there's no real strength until you level them and infuse them, which means you can't get a weapon traditionally strong until you infuse it, which is post Iron Keep. And I just find it kind of crazy. It's an interesting balance choice. But thank you for watching, and you take care now.